for Tio!
Ben, how are you? How's things? How are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Just enjoying my time in Australia and just back into footy, really.
You come from the ultimate hybrid. You know, you've got Samoan father, English mother, born in Australia or born in New Zealand, live in Australia, play rugby league for Samoa, come to Ireland thinking about playing for them, then go and play for England, and now you go back to Australia via Japan. So I don't know anyone that fits that remit. So how do you see yourself?
That's a hard one. I think I've always, I've maybe struggled with that for putting a label on myself, because I am multicultural, you know, and that was probably my upbringing. Like my mother was English, and that's when we were young. She, you know, we talked about how she was English, and my grandmother had a lot to do with raising us. She was from London, you know, and they used to tell us all the stories about the war and that. And then, you know, my dad's, you know, very proud Samoan. So that was sort of, growing up, I was sort of felt Samoan English. And I know I grew up in New Zealand, but those were what I sort of identified with.
Was the Lions ever on your radar prior to coming to Europe, and in particular coming and playing for England, and then seeing that as a possibility?
You know, if, in all honesty, it's not something that, you know, I ever dreamed of. You know, it's not something that I ever thought, you know, one day I'm going to wear that jersey, because I can't lie and say it was. I mean, the way my rugby career went, things just rolled into one thing into another. And, you know, it started off by just coming to Leinster. I mean, that was a huge jump for me. At the time, I was at the peak of my career, just won a premiership with South Sydney. I was a state of origin player, which I'd always dreamed of being. But I wanted to play rugby.
Why? Why do you jump? Why do you change that? You know, we see players like Sonny Bill doing something similar. Is it just about challenging yourself in a new arena and feeling as though you've ticked other boxes?
Yeah, I think it was. And, you know, like I said, growing up in New Zealand, rugby union was my first love. That was my childhood. You know, I dabbled with rugby league a fair bit, but really my childhood was rugby union. Rugby league sort of showed me a pathway to professionalism, and that's kind of why I ended up going that way. But I think when you get to 27 and you start ticking some of these boxes in your career, you start wondering about what the other side of your life would have been like. If you played rugby union, could I play? Would I make it? It just rolled into going to England and all that, and into the Lions.
And obviously, you end up moving across to Worcester Warriors. You get capped in 2016. You know, I only just recently put it together. You're good friends with Sam Burgess, so you must have had some interesting conversations with him off the back of the disappointment around the 2015 World Cup for him, his move back to the NRL, and then you subsequently coming in, almost replacing him.
Yeah, it was bizarre how that worked, because, you know, in the final months of the 2014 season, we were actually living together, and he was plotting his way out of the game, and I was plotting my way out of rugby league too. But we both didn't know that we were going, because we weren't telling each other what we were doing. And we figured it out that he was going to England, I was going to Ireland, and I was happy for him. He had a clear path to where he wanted to go, the World Cup. And, you know, unfortunately, it didn't pan out for him. And I was quite sad to see him leave, because I know he had a lot more in him. I knew he had a lot more growth, and he could have been one of the great players that England had.
Did he have any words of kind of warning or guidance when he exited and knew that you were coming into a team that obviously he hadn't quite fit into, slightly different coaching ticket, but, you know, did you have some phone conversations as to, you know, trying to avoid potential pitfalls, etc.?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, he did tell me, you know, just to be careful on my way in. But what I knew though was that, you know, they were different setups. When I was going in, Eddie had just been there for a year. They had won the Grand Slam. You know, they were flying high. It was a different setup. A lot of the same people were in there. So, but one thing I wanted to do was, as much as I was good friends with Sam, and I know he had some issues with some people in there, I wanted to go in with a just clean slate, because, you know, his problems are not my problems. And I'm going in to be a good team member, and I don't want to start off on the wrong foot, bringing in extra drama. So I just went in and made friends with everyone.
You were a mainstay in the 23 for Eddie Jones, be it as an explosive sub or someone that started for him. When it did come, when push came to shove and the squad was announced, how disappointed were you not to be part of that 2019 World Cup squad?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. Obviously, there was a bonding session and an incident that happened, and I'm not too sure whether that's the reason or whether that's not the reason. But what happened was I went into the World Cup and I picked up a calf. I tore my calf early in the World Cup camp, so I was doing a lot of rehab and I wasn't running, and I was probably falling a little bit behind. Then we had an incident with a teammate on a bonding session, and Eddie rang me up and said that he wasn't going to take me to the World Cup. He was pretty upset with me, and he said, we're not going to take both of you to the World Cup. And I said, okay, no worries. And at that stage, I was already packing up my house and moving my family, because they were going to come back here in Australia while I was going to be at the World Cup. So I was already packing up my house, and once he told me I wasn't going, I was just like, oh well, that was an interesting end to the last sort of 3.5 years that I've put in. But I had to keep moving. So within a day and a half, a deal at Toulon was done.
Have you kissed and made up with that other teammate?
we haven't yet. We haven't crossed paths yet. But the thing is we were actually, we got along quite fine. Sometimes things happen and guys have a few too many drinks. And to be honest, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And I think when I woke up in the morning, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But obviously for some people, and maybe a leadership group or something along those lines, maybe it was a big deal to them. So I can't really change sometimes who I am. And the way I am sometimes. You take the good with the bad.
Talk to me about the experience of playing in high octane games like for the Lions against the mighty All Blacks.
I felt very confident because I kind of knew the quality of player that was in this team. I mean, realistically, this is a Northern Hemisphere dream team. So I was quite confident. And I think, one thing I realized about Gatlin is, he can build a confidence in a squad. He can make you really feel like you can beat anyone. And I thought that was one of his strengths. And we went out there feeling like we could. But they were a great team. And I thought there was opportunities in that game where I thought, myself and a few, we could have done better to get a better result. And obviously after that game, I ended up going back to the bench to play a role, which I was happy with. I was just excited to be in the squad and contribute where I could.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope the rest of the season goes great for you, and good luck whatever the next few years holds for you.
Oh, thanks a lot. Cheers, mate.
Good to talk to you. Cheers. Thanks, Ben.